Hi, I'm Aktham. Welcome back to Interpreting Science. This week's science news include quantum entanglement from sunlight, a deadly flower that might save lives, and a mind-blowing accidental calibration photo of the sun, possibly explaining why it can knock out satellites and power grids. There's also news about three habits tied to 13 extra years without dementia and why your brain suddenly stops improving when you're getting good at something, and a couple more. So, 8 in total. If this is your first time here, I made a video explaining why I'm doing this at all. Link is above here, and I will link it also at the end of this video. So, let's get into it.
What if the light warming your face right now could power a quantum computer? Researchers at the University of Ottawa and Germany's Max Planck Institute for the Science of Light just showed that sunlight, the normal, plain, messy, everyday sunlight, can generate quantum entangled photon pairs, something scientists assumed only precise, coherent laser light could do. They built a cone-shaped glass concentrator that funnels sunlight from a window-sized lens down into a fiber the width of a human hair, focused onto a tiny crystal. This resulted in an entanglement about 94% as clean as a perfect laser-based setup tested outdoors, and it violated Bell's inequality, the standard proof that this is genuinely quantum, not a classical fluke. Quantum tech, secure communication, ultra-precise sensors, all these currently need energy-hungry lasers. If sunlight can do the job, satellites could generate secure encryption keys using light that's already up there for free, with no extra hardware burning power. But this is a proof of concept, not a product yet. Brightness and entanglement purity both still need work. But lasers themselves went through exactly this arc, a 1960s lab curiosity once dismissed as a solution looking for a problem, now sitting inside every barcode scanner, fiber optic cable, and surgery room. If sunlight-based entanglement follows anything like that curve, the applications are likely still ahead of us, not behind us. From harnessing randomness in sunlight to confirming a particle that's made of nothing but pure force. Imagine a particle made of nothing but glue, no core, no stuff, just the force itself holding itself together. At China's Institute of High Energy Physics, an experiment has spent nearly 2 decades hunting for a glue ball, something gluons, the particles that bind quarks together inside protons and neutrons, were predicted over 50 years ago to be able to form on their own. After tracking the decay of more than 10 billion specific particles, researchers confirmed that a candidate first spotted in 2011 has exactly the mass, spin, and flavorless chemical signature theory demands. This isn't going to change your day-to-day life. It's deep particle physics with zero near-term application, and its value is theoretical. However, this closes a 50-year-old prediction. And this is how science really works. Even when a theory or a prediction works, science keeps aiming to find out how it works and to provide evidence on that. This reminds me of the Higgs boson, which helps explain why particles have mass, predicted in 1964 and experimentally proven 55 years later at CERN's Large Hadron Collider in 2012. Also reminds me of detecting the gravitational waves by the Laser Interferometer Gravitational Wave Observatory, LIGO, in 2015, almost a century after being predicted by Einstein's general theory of relativity in 1916. From physics that's abstract to physics you could hold in your kitchen. What if your food packaging could tell you before you even open it whether it's actually still good? Researchers have developed a hydrogel-based packaging material, a water-based gel, that changes measurably in response to the gases and chemical signals released as food spoils, giving a readable freshness indicator built directly into the package. Less guessing games with best before dates, less food thrown out too early or eaten too late. Don't expect this on shelves next month, though. It's still lab stage, and turning any new packaging material into something a supermarket can print, seal, and ship cheaply at scale is its own multi-year problem, separate from proving the science works. That said, vacuum-sealed packaging and the humble pull tab can both took over a decade to go from lab concept to your kitchen counter, and today's material science generally moves faster than that. This kind of smart packaging has a real plausible road to your fridge. It's just not a short one. From materials that protect our food to plants that could kill you, yet might also heal you. Two of the most poisonous flowers in the garden, capable of nerve damage and paralysis in tiny doses, might also be hiding some of our next medicines. Scientists from Michigan State University and the Czech Academy of Sciences studied wolfsbane and larkspur, tracking thousands of genes to find the biochemical assembly line behind their toxic but promising compounds. They identified 6 enzymes needed to build a compound called aticinium, then rebuilt that entire 6-step pathway inside tobacco plants. Yes, tobacco, turning the tobacco plant into a living factory that produced the compound from scratch. Many familiar medicines, aspirin, ibuprofen, some cancer drugs, either come from plants or are inspired by their chemistry. One close cousin of this story, Taxol, one of the most widely used cancer drugs today, comes from the bark of the Pacific yew, another plant that's toxic in its raw form. This gives researchers a reproducible lab source for chemicals connected to pain relief, anti-malarial, anti-cancer, and pest control research, instead of relying on the slow, tiny amounts plants make naturally. Now, a compound linked to malaria or cancer research is still many steps from an approved medicine and a finished drug. Nevertheless, this really hands researchers a reliable, reproducible supply to test with and move forward. Exactly the kind of unglamorous foundational step that came right before Taxol became a standard treatment. From engineering compounds inside plants to a mechanism engineered inside your own skull. Ever notice how fast you improve at first and then just stop? University of Maryland biologists may have found why. They found a scaffold-like structure around brain cells called the extracellular matrix that loosens within hours of a practice session and rebuilds within about a day. A cycle that lets each session's learning lock in before the next one. As a skill approaches mastery, this rebuilding cycle slows down and eventually stops, as if the brain decides the so far learned skill needs protection and further changes can be a risk, not a benefit. This helps explain the classic plateau, rapid gains early on, then a wall, and why young brains, with more active remodeling, pick up new skills like languages more easily than adults. It's a familiar pattern from a completely different domain, too. Muscles don't grow during a workout, they grow during the rest afterward while they rebuild. The brain, it turns out, may run on a similar loosen and rebuild rhythm. This has only been shown so far in the auditory cortex of one experimental model, not yet a proven way to break through your own plateau, but it's a genuinely promising mechanism. And mechanisms like this are usually the first step toward eventually learning how to work with them, not just around them. From a cycle that governs how we learn to a much slower shift happening quietly in the background of the same brain. Somewhere around age 50, your brain's memory center starts quietly swapping out its immune cells, and that swap might matter more than we thought. A study mapped individual cells in the human hippocampus, the brain's memory hub, across the adult lifespan. Between roughly ages 50 and 75, the brain's lifelong resident immune cells, previously believed to self-renew for life, decline and get replaced by more inflammatory cells that resemble ones normally found circulating in blood, not the brain. The genome's 3D structure also loosens across multiple cell types during this window. Aging is the single biggest risk factor for Alzheimer's and dementia. And this is a newly visible, previously hidden process that may help explain that link. To be precise, this finding maps what changes, but doesn't yet say why or how to stop it. So it's an important clue, not a treatment. But like almost always, defining the what leads to the why, which in turn leads to the how to deal with it. Staying with brain aging, but this time 3 familiar actionable factors instead of an invisible cellular one. 3 familiar risk factors, 13 extra years without dementia. That's the headline from a 26-year study of over 12,000 people. Researchers at NYU Langone tracked people from around age 56 for an average of 26 years. Participants with none of 3 vascular risk factors, namely high blood pressure, diabetes, smoking, lived on average about 30 dementia-free years from that starting point, while participants with all 3 averaged just 17. That's a 13-year gap tied to 3 measurable, modifiable factors. 42% of Americans are estimated to be at risk of dementia after age 55. Knowing that 13 more good years is possible from managing blood pressure, blood sugar, and not smoking is concrete enough to actually act on. Scientific honesty here. This is an association, not proof that removing these factors directly causes those extra years. They were also only measured once at the start, not tracked as they changed over the following decades. Even so, this doesn't need to wait for perfect proof to be worth acting on. Blood pressure, blood sugar, and smoking are 3 things already fully within your own control today, association or not. From decades of data about our own aging to the sharpest look we've ever had at the star keeping us alive, these are the sharpest photos of the sun ever taken, and they may explain one of its biggest mysteries. Using the Inoue Solar Telescope in Hawaii, the world's most powerful solar telescope, an international team resolved features as small as 20 kilometers across on the sun's surface, the photosphere. And if you think it's weird to say as small as 20 kilometers, remember that the average distance between the Earth and the Sun is about 150 million kilometers. So what the team found is small, swirling, whirlpool-like patterns called Kelvin-Helmholtz instability, appearing almost everywhere along the boundaries of magnetic regions. And the crazy part, these were first predicted theoretically around 1870. Yes, 156 years ago. This may help explain why the sun's outer atmosphere is so much hotter than its surface, and how magnetic energy builds up before solar flares, the kind of solar activity that can disrupt satellites and power grids on Earth. Funnily enough, the researchers stumbled onto this almost by accident during a routine calibration run. A good reminder that pointing a better instrument at something we consider already understood can still turn up genuinely new physics.
If you are interested in the sun, you might be also interested in watching 2 other videos. One of them was published by Startalk with Neil deGrasse Tyson, in which he hosted a sun expert, and they talked together about the sun like for 50 minutes, explaining a lot of things, and well, there was a lot of information new for me that really blew my mind. And the other one is from one of my favorite science communication YouTube channels, that is Veritasium, in which they talked about the solar eclipse and why it happens, why do we have two solar eclipses per year, and why mostly in the northern sphere, and really a lot of stuff. So it's a really beautiful explanatory video. I advise you to watch it. I will link these two videos in the description box below. And that was this week's episode of Interpreting Science. We started with sunlight doing quantum tricks and ended up with the sharpest photo ever taken of the sun that makes all of this possible. Passing by the world's first glueball, smart food packaging, medicine from deadly flowers, brain learning plateaus and hidden shift at 50, and three things accompany 13 more dementia-free years. Science keeps proving all predictions or disproving them, and finding the unexpected, even in places we thought we already understood very well. I hope you enjoyed this video and see you next week.